Just hours after a shooting incident in the U.S. state of Michigan, 2 people were killed after a shooting at a park in Texas. Now, the incident occurred during the Juneteenth celebration in Round Rock. Several other people were injured. The Round Rock police chief said they do not have a suspect in custody and the investigation is ongoing.
On Saturday evening, Round Rock was hosting its Juneteenth celebration at Old Settlers Park, located at 1371 Heralds Parkway. At approximately 10:50 p.m., an altercation broke out between 2 groups. During that altercation, someone produced a gun and began to fire. Multiple victims were hit.
Earlier on Saturday, as many as 10 people, including 2 children, were shot and wounded at a water park near Detroit. As per police, the suspect has died by suicide while in police containment at a home near the crime scene in Rochester Hills area. According to the Oakland County Sheriff, the suspect possibly fired about 28 bullets while reloading the gun multiple times. The incidents have reinstilled the focus on the ever-pertaining issue of gun violence in the United States. They come at a time when guns continue to divide Americans in the ongoing presidential campaign. While President Joe Biden and his supporters want a ban on assault weapons, his opponent Donald Trump says that Biden is threatening the constitutional rights of gun owners. Remember, the first presidential debate between the rivals is due at the end of this month, and it is likely to feature gun laws as a divisive subject yet again. As the debate continues, the incidents have increased manifold over the years. Let's look at the numbers here. If we focus on Biden's ongoing term between 2020 and 2023, America has seen at least 600 incidents of mass shootings each year. That's almost double of that of the previous period. But some of America's deadliest mass shootings occurred during Trump's presidency. In his first year in office, a gunman killed 60 and injured at least 850 people during a music festival in Las Vegas. Soon after, at least 26 people were killed at a church in Texas. During Trump's second year, 17 people were killed at a school in Parkland shooting, and 12 were killed at a country western bar in California. And during one weekend in Trump's third year, 22 people were killed at a Walmart in El Paso. And these are just a few of the hundreds of mass shootings that the U.S. continues to witness. The country records an average of 118 deaths per day due to gun violence. In 2023 alone, the U.S. saw over 42,000 deaths due to gun violence. And yet, Trump has consistently stood in the way of gun safety legislation, and President Biden appears to tread lightly, knowing that gun laws can prove to be a slippery slope for him. Americans seem to be ambivalent about introducing laws that restrict their constitutional guaranteed freedoms, even at the cost of thousands of lives each year.
Pastor, as he was giving the sermon, he said, when I was raised...
All right, to discuss this further, we're being joined by Stephen Golub, who's a lawyer and political analyst. He's joining us live from California. Stephen, always a pleasure speaking with you. How much do you feel gun laws will play a role in the upcoming elections? It is surely expected to be a divisive subject in the presidential debates.
It's hard to say, actually, because there will be other issues on the agenda in the election. Certainly, the very survival of our democracy, which, frankly, Donald Trump threatens explicitly. I'm not going overboard and saying that he's voiced support for the insurrectionists who violently seized the Capitol, a few years ago, talking about pardoning them, talking about going after prosecuting his political opponents, even people in his own party who have opposed him. That's one big issue. Another will be reproductive rights, abortion, which is a very big issue. Will guns be as big an issue? Perhaps not. Although it could depend on what happens between now and the election, especially leading up to the election. If there is another of our, unfortunately, frequent, horrific episodes of gun violence in which many people get killed, that could galvanize electoral focus on this. And some people who otherwise might not have voted may turn out to vote for President Biden because he and the Democrats are more in favor of gun control. And just to add one thing, I think I'll differ a bit with your introduction in that I think the majority of Americans do favor gun control, something like 70 to 80% do. But the problem in the U.S. is that a very vocal and dedicated minority make that the main issue that they vote on. Only about a third or so of Americans own guns, but those who do, the average is that they have 5 guns per household. That's an indication of their sentiment and dedication to guns. They're feeling that it's a vital part of their lives, and they will vote mainly on that issue, which affects the whole political calculus in terms of trying to get gun control legislation passed.
Stephen, now the figures that we had in our report, they are astounding. And as you mentioned that there are bigger issues, and I agree with that, there are bigger issues, but then the minority that you mentioned, which owns guns, it is critical to them. So talk to us about, the gun laws. Will it just remain a political flashpoint in the US, or can one expect the mounting death toll from gun violence to come down and some concrete steps to curb gun violence in these terms? Because whether it's been Trump or Biden, we've seen enough gun violence in both their terms.
Well, we've seen more than enough, and frankly, it's our national sickness that we still don't control guns, and that our control over guns is weaker than almost any other society, except those that are effectively war torn and they don't have the power to legislate or enforce gun control. Will there be a change? Boy, it's hard to say given the dynamics I just sketched. I think that if the Democrats do get to a point where they control the presidency and have substantial majorities in both the Senate and the House of Representatives, then we could see substantial gun control legislation. But whether the Democrats could get to that point where right now the country is divided kind of 50-50 between Democrats and Republicans is a big question. And I'll add, we also have the added powerful constraint these days of a radically right Supreme Court, which recently issued a ruling that effectively allows people to own automatic weapons. That's a weapon where you just pull the trigger once and literally the gun can discharge hundreds of rounds per minute, as opposed to what's called a semi-automatic weapon, where you have to pull the trigger individually each time. With a Supreme Court like that, that's gone against its own means of interpreting laws and constitutions, its own notion that you have to go with the literal text of a law or a rule, the common sense text in interpreting a law, and instead has said, in effect, that no, an automatic weapon isn't really an automatic weapon. Therefore, these types of weapons are allowed, these death machines, really. Then you've got both the political aspect and you've got a Supreme Court which decides many issues ultimately in the U.S., weighing against strong gun control in the near future.
All right, Stephen, always a pleasure speaking with you. Happy to have you here on Pulse with us. You never mince your words and you always say it like it is, and that's one of the best parts of having you on the show. Thank you so much. That was Stephen Golub, lawyer and political analyst joining us from California.
Thank you.